This episode is brought to you in part by Split Software. Split is the feature delivery platform you need to help you exceed modern expectations in continuous and progressive delivery. As they once said, if you're not first, you're last. Similarly, if you're not delivering, you're falling behind. A software release shouldn't be stressful, and yet they tend to happen late at night after many days of stress. Imagine if it were otherwise. No mishaps, headaches, or hair loss. Split is the feature data platform software engineers need to release features quickly and safely. You and up to 10 of your colleagues can create your first feature flags at split.io/AWS Morning Brief. That's split.io/AWS Morning Brief. Kubernetes, the Greek god of spending money on cloud services, king of container chaos, and champion of the paradox of choice. For years, I've snarked at and snubbed Kubernetes. In fact, I've mostly avoided any serious work with containers, particularly in production. Now, I find myself kneeling at that Greek god's feet, just a lowly former sysadmin on a hero's journey to conquer the complexities of Kubernetes' open source system. Why? It's basically impossible to avoid Kubernetes at this point. I said in 2019 that within 5 years, nobody would care about it anymore. And hey, I still have 2 more years to go before everyone's going to stop caring about it. As luck would have it, I recently began work on a new production service. I've decided to over-engineer the hell out of it because I live in San Francisco, and then run it atop Kubernetes. That process has already been a baffling maze, highlighting how overwhelming, confusing, and balkanized Kubernetes is for newbies like me. I mean, just look at the cloud computing landscape. It is a sarcastic joke of logos, over 400 the last time that I checked. So as I started on my project, I asked some folks on Twitter for advice. Don't do that, as it turns out. My question was basically, how do I get code from my laptop into a Kubernetes cluster efficiently and repeatably so I can do iterative development? The answers span 25 different possible product solutions without an obvious winner. 25. After 8 years of existence, shouldn't we have coalesced around best practices by now? Especially for basic questions like, how do I get an app in containers into Kubernetes and then iterate rapidly? Meanwhile, I'm over here just absolutely screaming at the sheer diversity of responses. And then it struck me that a lot of the suggestions I got came from folks working for a vendor in the space. And yes, most of these people truly believe in their company's product, but they do have a vested interest in their company's success, which does skew my data collection. Now, how am I supposed to know what the right path is?
This episode is sponsored in part by our friends at Sysdig. Sysdig secures your cloud from source to run. They believe, as do I, that DevOps and security are inextricably linked. If you want to learn more about how they view this, check out their blog. It's definitely worth the read. To learn more about how they are absolutely getting it right from where I sit, visit sysdig.com and tell them that I sent you. That's SYSDIG.com. And my thanks to them for their continued support of this ridiculous nonsense.
Maybe the unbiased programmers all know there are just a million different ways to get Kubernetes up and running. I'm convinced that any company that's managed to get Kubernetes going in a production environment has encountered and overcome all of these choices. But the odds that they all picked the same path to get there are vanishingly small. I suspect that "we run Kubernetes" translates to "we have a bespoke unicorn that no other company on the planet runs in the same way that we do. So an awful lot of our engineering ingenuity goes toward keeping the metaphorical lights on. Enjoy bumbling through your little Kubernetes experiment, Corey." And I have zero confidence that the answers to any further questions about running Kubernetes as I go through this are going to be any clearer about what the right path is. The paradox of choice tells us that too many options is actually worse for our puny human brains than just a few choices, or none at all. Like the major cloud providers, Kubernetes seems to have missed the memo. But like Theseus approaching the Minotaur's labyrinth, I'm ready to take on the maze of the great Kubernetes. Let's see where this journey takes me.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.